Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Brachos Perek Dalet Halacha Gimel, and God willing, starting Halacha Dalet in the Ois V'Hadar's edition. We are going to be learning Daf Mem Tes. We left off on Daf Mem Ches Amid Beis, 2 lines before the bottom of the Amid by the 2 dots. Rabbi Yoina B'Shem Rav. Right prior to these 2 dots, we learned at the end of yesterday's shir the Machlokes between Amoraim, between Rab Ze'eda b'Shem Rab Yirmiyah, versus Rabbi Yanai b'Shem Rab Yishmael, whether a Yachid during a Tainus Tzibur will say Aneinu as a bracha for itself, which is what we don't do, or whether the Yachid says it in Shemei Tefillah, which is actually the way we paskin. This is where we left off, and we're going to have to refer back to this today in the beginning of today's shir. The Gemara is going to begin asking now regarding at what tefillos do we add anenu, meaning is it maitiv the night going into the fast, even though most fast days don't begin at night, but it's already the date, the calendar date of the fast day, and therefore there's a svara to say that anenu is already said in the Shemona Esrei night prior or not, or do we begin saying it during the day? And there's even a svara to say that you say anenu shachris mincha, even maitiv leaving the fast, even though you break your fast, but you break your fast after maitiv. During maitiv, you're still in the fast day, as we'll see in the Gemara. We're going to learn a Gavaldik rule that when, as a rule, with exceptions, but the rule is that whenever you have something that is added to the Shemona Esrei, if it's regarding the future, it's added in Avodah, in Ritzei, because the whole tefillah of Ritzei is a tefillah for the future, that may Hashem restore the service of the Beis Hamikdash. And whenever there is something that we insert in the Shemona Esrei that's regarding the past, we add it in Hoida'ah. Like, for example, when we say Al Hanisim, we say it in Moedim, because you're thanking God for that which happened in the past. Okay, now we're going to refer back to the Mishnah, in which we had a 3-way machlokes Tanoim. Rabban Gamliel holds that you only say the full Shemona Esrei tefillos in the Amidah. Rabbi Yeshua gives this option of Me'ein Shemona Esrei, which is a abridged form of the Shemona Esrei, and Rabbi Akiva says it depends. In the tefillah shegura b'fiv, then always say the whole 18. If a person doesn't know how to daven properly, then they have the option, like Rabbi Yeshua, which always gives the option to all people of saying Me'ein Shemona Esrei. I know that when we learned the Mishnah, we quoted the Bavli that there's Havinenu. Actually, we'll see today that there's a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. What is this Me'ein Shemona Esrei? We'll see there are 2 options. Now, on Daf Mem Tes Amid Beis, we're going to begin the new Mishnah, Halacha Dalet. The new Mishnah is going to teach us the rule that Ha'oisa Tfilosei Keva ain't Tfilosei Tachnunim, as we will explain when we learn it. The Mishnah tells us a new type of tefillah called the tefillah ketzara. Tefillah ketzara is not the me'ein yudches, as we'll explain. It's something completely different. And if we'll have time, we're going to move on to the sugya, which is what happens if a person is in the middle of Shemona Esrei, like in the middle of Shachris, and they realize, oops, I already davened Shachris. What should they do at that time? We're dedicating this class for the success in us getting back all of our hostages without making a deal with the devil, and the tremendous hatzlacha for all of our soldiers, and Hashem should put it in the hearts of our leaders that they should make all of the right decisions. Amen. Daf Mem Ches Amid Beis, 2 lines before the bottom of the Amid, at the end of the line, right by the 2 dots, just to know that here we have it Rabbi Yoina, but there are others who have the Girsa Rab Chuna, whichever one. Either versions have it that it is in the name of Rav, that what? That afilu yachid shegazar tainus alatzmei tzarich lahaskin me'ein hamu'ura. Before the 2 dots, like we made the quick recap, we learned that when a yachid is davening his silent Shemona Esrei, her silent Shemona Esrei, during a tainus tzibur, you add a nenu, and the machlokes Amoraim, right, Rab Ze'eda b'Shem Rab Yirmiyah versus Rab Yanai b'Shem Rab Yishmael is, where do you do it? Is it a bracha b'fnei atzmai, like the Shliach Tzibur, or does the Yachid add it in the Shema Koilenu. That was the previous topic. But that's when you are fasting a Tainis Tzibur. Adds now Rabbi Yoina or Rabbi Chuna in the name of Rav that even if it's not a Tainis Tzibur, even if it is an individual, that he, she took upon themselves mincha prior to have a Tainis Yachid, they also have to add the tefillah of Aneinu. Very good. Now, Daf Mem Tesam Adalev asks the Gemara, Heichan hu oimra, where is it said? What do we mean, where is it said? This is not the previous topic of whether it's Ben Goyal Yisrael to Refa'enu versus in Shema Koilenu. That's a new question. During what tefillos do you add Aneinu? Now, guys, other than Yom Kippur, other than Tisha B'Av, generally the rule is that, especially a private fast day, is only from the morning until night. Nevertheless, there's a Havamina, there's a Svara to say that Aneinu should already be inserted, might have prior. And let's read inside the Charedim. Heichan hu oimra, right in the Yerushalmi, you have it with an Aleph, in the Charedim, they're going to say, hey, which is fine. Do we say Arvis Koidim Tainis? Why would we say it by Maidev? He gives an example. Just like Haskara Shabbos. What happens if it's Shabbos? From when do you begin mentioning Shabbos? Even Shabbos Yontif, for example, where you don't daven a Shabbos Shmoneh Esrei, you're davening a Yontif Shmoneh Esrei. From when do you start mentioning Shabbos? Night before. That's by Yidden. The day begins from the night before. Or no, it's not shaykh to a fast day because we only begin the most fast days during the day. The night prior, we're not fasting. So Eina Maskir Elo, look inside the Charedim. When should you mention Aneinu? Shachris Mincha, which is, by the way we do it, and Arvis, the night going out of the fast. Now, why would we think that we should say Aneinu the night going outside the fast? It's already Maidev, it's already the next day. Explains the Charedim. Because the Adayin hu b'tanisoi, when do we break our fast, guys? After Maidev. So maybe when you're davening Maidev post-fast, in that Maidev, you should add Aneinu. So these are the two sides. Either Maidev Shachris Mincha, or Shachris Mincha Maidev. We do neither of these two options. But in the Yerushalmi, it's either this or that. It says the Gemara that Rabbi Zajac b'shem Rafuna, he answers, Kileiloi shel Shabbos u'chayoymoim. Friday night, just like Friday night, Maidev, Shachris, and Mincha. Wow. In other words, the fast day is considered to have begun at nightfall, even though you're not fasting. And I want to say it like this. What? So then you already say Aneinu Tuesday night, even though you only begin fasting Wednesday morning. Let me say it like this. When it comes to communal fast days, someone just had a shayla here in the community. They want to make up Sasimcha on Asara B'Tevis night going into it. So they say that's the question is that even though we're not fasting, but like Asara B'Tevis, we fast from the morning, but the night is already Asara B'Tevis. There was a tshuva of Rav Moshe that writes that you can make a celebration with music. Interesting. Yeah. But here in our Gemara, we're saying no, that you stay Ameinu already at night. Okay. So the Gemara, again, we left off yesterday. Let's review this for the final time. Machlokes between Rabbi Zira b'shem Rabbi Yirmiyah versus Rabbi Yanai b'shem Rabbi Yishmael. The question was whether Aneinu, that is being said by the Yachid in his silent Shmoneh Esrei, whether it's said like by the Shliach Tzibur as a bracha b'fnei atzmai, or whether it's included in Shema Koilenu, which is the way we do it. That was a machlokes amoiroi. So the Gemara says that Amar Rav Mani, Ano dolo bedakto. I that did not make a bedika. What do you mean? I that didn't make a bedika. Says the Charedim. Look inside the Charedim, 4 lines from the top. Ano koidem shoshamati machlokes zed Rabbi Yirmiyah, who holds that you should say Aneinu bracha b'fnei atzmai, and Rabbi Yanai says no, included in Shema Tefillah. Prior to me becoming aware that there was a machlokes amoirayim, I myself had a doubt. I didn't know that this was already discussed. I didn't know. I'm reading the Charedim. It should be included in Shemei Tefillah, in Shema Kuleinu, because there's a kaimelan, there's a rule that whatever you need, you include in Shemei Tefillah. Or you should say it as a bracha b'fnei atzmai. Why? Because we find in Masechtas Tainis that when you have communal fast days, actually for drought, at some point they added 6 independent brachas. So you see that maybe you should make an independent bracha. I did not know. And back inside the Gemara, Ika Hadod Rabbi Yirmiyah, that says you should make a bracha b'fnei atzmai. Ika Hadod Rabbi Yanai b'shem Rabbi Shmuel, that you should include it in Shemei Tefillah. In other words, I didn't know that. I didn't know that there's a machlekes hamoraim. I knew that there's a logic to say like this, and there's another logic to say like that. So what did I do? So look is lisidra. It's amazing that the word sidra, seder, a seder means an order. That's one of the names that are given to the Beis HaMedrash. Because in the Beis HaMedrash, we're putting the Torah Shebal Peh in the right order. We're ordering it. So I went into the Beis HaMedrash, I went into the Seder. Till today, what do you call in the yeshiva going to learn? Go to the Seder. But that they mean, the Seder means Seder Bisman. The Seder means that the Seder begins at the Chveis, at 11 a.m. or 7 a.m. The Seder means we went into the Seder of being Mesader, we want to know the halach. And in the Beis Medrash, Vishamis, and I heard here again, that's why I mentioned, whether it's Rab Chuna, whether it's Rabbi Yoina, B'Shem Rav, it's amazing, we're putting the last topic of yesterday and the first topic today together. I heard the statement that Afilu Yachid, Shegazar al Atzmai Tainis, also, Tzarech Lahaskir Me'ein HaMa'oiro. Now, the same machlokes amoraim that we had yesterday, how are you masking it? Bifnei Atzmai, or included the same, we don't know, B'Shem Rav, by the Yachid. But from the question of Rabbi Yossi, I know what Rav meant, and I know where it should be included. Now, what did Rabbi Yossi ask on Rav? That how can you Rav say that for Hamas Nisa Pliga? No, I have a liar from a Braisa that you're wrong. There's an argument with you. They argue with this opinion. Which Braisa? And now we're quoting a Braisa that B'chol Yom, every day Adam Espalo Shmona Esrei. Every day you daven Shmona Esrei. By the way, that Shitas Rabban Gamliel. You don't have an option of making it abridged. You don't have that option. We're going to learn about this soon. And not only that, adds the Braisa, even on Matzah Shabbos. What's the Chiddush? You would think that since there is a mitzvah to be Moisev Mechoil al HaKodesh, which is why you see every night, when do we daven Ma'ariv? Tzveis. Let's go with the Alter Rebbe says, 31 minutes, 28 minutes after Shkia. But on Shabbos, we never take out Shabbos 31 minutes after Shkia. Even though we don't go with the Rabbeinu Tam Shkia, but Shabbos is around an hour after Lich Benjamin of the night prior. It's much longer. Why? Because there's a mitzvah to be Moisef Mechoil ala Kodesh, plus other reasons. But no, since you would think that Ma'ariv has the spot of Matzah Shabbos should be a 7 blessing Amida prayer. We don't do that, even though you're Moisef Mechoil ala Kodesh. In other words, we want to extend the Shabbos. But Ma'ariv, Matzah Shabbos is 18, not 7. And even Matzah Yom HaKippurim. What's the Chiddush over here? So the Charedim reminds us, we just learned a few days ago, right? That there are those who hold that Ne'ilah could Bechlal exempt you from Ma'ariv. Ne'ilah only has 7 brachas. No, you can't do that. You got to daven 18. Ubematzoi Tainis Sibur. That whenever you have a Tainis Sibur, like we just mentioned above, you would think since you're still fasting, here, you would think you would what? You would say Aneinu. No. If Aneinu was said in Shemei Tefillah, not as a bracha b'fnei atzmai, it's irrelevant. No. Obviously, from the Kasha, from the way he learned the Braisa, he understood the Braisa. No. If you are to say Aneinu is always a bracha for itself, even the Yachid. Elamad, the Braisa is telling you, don't say Aneinu matzei tainis sibur. We don't say it. Even though you're still fasting by Ma'ariv, it's already the next calendar date. Okay, point is, and therefore, and what is he trying to say with that? That refutes Rav. You, Rav, say that if a Yachid should go on a lot of kindness, if that would have been the case, then he would have said it Ma'ariv the night post. No, you don't say it. You don't say it. You see, even on Matzei Tainis Sibur. Okay, so what do we see from over here? Now, let's go back to this machlokes amoraim, to these two sides, right? So says the Gemara, says Rav Mani, that the Rabbi Yossi, from that which Rabbi Yossi said, and he's challenging Rav, that Masnisa Pliga, Havakain, we see that what? That Anenu is a tefillah b'fnei atzmo. Gavalik. Is itospas ben goyel Yisrael ulrefe choylem. Which is why, if you taka would have said Anenu, you would have had 19 brachas, and that's the whole kasha against Rav. There's a lot more details to this, but look inside the Charedim for other side questions, but let's go right. Okay. Now, let's add about other insertions. So we covered Anenu. And the Gemara is concluding, not the way we do it in the Yerushalmi, that whenever Anenu is added, even in the silent, what we call the silent Shemona Esrei, Anenu is said as a bracha b'fnei atzmai. That's the Yerushalmi. Okay, now let's go to other additions that we make. Amar Rab Acha bar Yitzchak in the name of Rab Chia from Tzipoidim. That Yachid b'Tisha B'Av also tzarich lahaskir me'ein ha'ma'oiro. Unlike this whole question, bracha b'fnei atzmai, or inserted, unlike that, what we're going to speak now, the nusach of what we call nachem. The Yerushalmi's nusach is a rachem, not a bracha b'fnei atzmai. Even in the Yerushalmi, the way we do it, we insert it in the bracha of the Yerushalayim Ercha. Even though they already included at Samach Dov and Avdecha in the Yerushalayim Ercha. In addition, during on Tisha B'Av, you add Nachem. Another interesting thing that the Gemara here is not telling you only by Mincha. We only added by Mincha for whatever reason. We only added by Mincha. L'choira, the Yerushalmi is saying you added always. Ma'oimer Rachem Hashem Elokeinu Rachamecha Harabim U'Bachasudecha HaNemanim Aleinu V'Alamcha Yisrael and V'Al Yerushalayim Ercha V'Al Tziyod Mishkan Kevodecha. Right on the city that was destroyed, that was razed, that is desolate, which Hanasuna b'yad zodim, it's given over to the hands of strangers. Hanamusa b'yad oritzim, it's trampled in the hands of the Waqf. The Yerushua legiyonos and legions have possessed it. And idol worshippers that put their backsides towards it. They desecrate it every time they bow down to Mecca. That's a desecration of the Beis HaMikdash. And there's nevuah, clear nevuah about it. That's what he saw. Yecheskel saw people are putting their backsides towards the Makam HaMikdash. That's why they do that. And we allow them. But this was given to the Yidden as a heritage. And Ulazera Yeshurun is another name of the Jewish people. Yerusham, Hoyrashta, you have bequeathed it. And you should have mercy. And what's the mercy? That you should rebuild it. How will it be rebuilt? That with fire you destroyed it. It was burned. And by the way, it was miraculous that it was burned because it's made out of stone primarily. Nevertheless, it burned. And it's going to be rebuilt with fire. It's going to be rebuilt with fire. No, it's more. We have this liner. We have this liner. Yeah. It's very different. Correct. And ka'amur, and as it says that the ani eheyallah nu'um Hashem, I will be for it, meaning for Yerushalayim, chaymas eish, a wall of fire which will be surrounding it. Ulachaved eya b'toicha. A fire. They're gonna throw a rocket. The rocket will hit the Makam HaMikdash. We should throw a bomb. We should go into Lebanon and we should throw a rocket to hit the Makam HaMikdash. That's what we should do. If we would want, we don't want yet. All right. Now, here we go. So now that we said that the Yachid is masquerade, so now the Gemara wants to know where. So Rabbi Abdima, the Tzipoidin, Kumerav Mana, Heichanomra. Amaloi, and he responds, Va'adayin ein at lozoi. You're not clear? Kol davar, and this is the big rule, guys. This is the big rule. Okay, we say it in Yerushalayim. They didn't say it in Yerushalayim. Where did they say it? So this is the rule. Kol davar shehul haba. Any prayer that is regarding the future, if it doesn't have a bracha for itself, where would you say it? Where do you put it in? You say it in the bracha of avodah, which is ritzei, of course, because what's the whole bracha of ritzei? We're asking God to restore the temple. It's a bracha about a future event. So if you want to add something regarding the future event, you say it in ritzei. And by the way, that would mean that they said rachem in ritzei. What do we do in ritzei? We say yalav yavu. So Mustam, in the place of yalav yavu, they would say not nachem, rachem. Another rule. Anything that's regarding the past, I'll give you an example. Al Hanisim, you say it b'hoidah. Why do you say it b'hoidah? Because when you give thanks, I know that we have an inyan al pi chasidus. That's a chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov, that you give thanks before it happens. Whether you call that pressure, whether you call that passive aggressive, whether you call that emunah, call it whatever you want, that's a chiddush. Normally, you give thanks post facto. In English, you say, I'm already thanking you in advance. That's what Zanai is. You think for the past. Thanks in advance. That's a Americanized. Okay. That's based on the Baal Shem. Okay, let's go back. Okay. And indeed, this rule, umasnisa amrakain, you have a mnemonic, you have a zecher from the Mishnah. This Mishnah is not talking about this directly. This Mishnah is talking, as the Pnei Moshe reminds us in Perek Haroya in Brachas, that when a person is about to enter a city, we're speaking about entering a city where it's not so easy to enter. There might be people, there might be taxes, you might be taken to jail. You're by a border. Chal Yidin, already even our generation, you come to a border, you start sweating. Why? Because our Zaydas, when they came to a border, they were in trouble. Today, you're thinking, American, you go to a border, big deal. Today, people don't go to Mexico. They don't want to stand in line with the passport. You get nervous. So there's a bracha that you make prior to entering, and then there's the which God protect me from the banditin. And then when you get through the border, you thank God you thank God for the fact that you got through it. The Mishnah says that v'noisen hoidah l'sha'avar. In other words, when you go through, when you enter the city, when you pass the border control, you thank God, and then you have to leave the city. So you already shout for the future. So that's an amonic. Now the Mishnah is speaking about the special tefillas you make when you travel. And basically, when you enter and exit a city, there's going to be a total of 4 tefillas. Prior to entry, post-entry, prior to leaving, post-leaving. But the fact that Mishnah says the lashon that you give hoidah l'sha'avar v'tzoyek la'asad lavai, that's an amonic to this rule. And therefore, coming back, where would you add the rachem? You add it in, let's say, l'chaim. No, that's a whole different priya. Now, going back to the Mishnah halachi gimel, there were three opinions. Rabban Gamliel, only Yudches. Then you have Rabbi Yeshua. You always can say me'ein shmona esrei. And then the compromise Rabbi Akiva. When we said the words me'ein shmona esrei, so we said havinenu, you learn brachas, probably, and you're going to know right now, no, that's not l'kula alma. What will be the issue? Havinenu means that you say the first 3 in its entirety. You say the last 3 brachos in their entirety. And then the one in the middle is an abridged version. That's the way Havinenu means. But not everyone agrees to that. Let's go. Says the Rabbi Shua Oimer, referring back to the Mishnah, me'ein shmona esrei, asks the Gemara, Eizu me'ein shmona, what does that mean? Machlokes. Rav says, Soif kol bracha v'bracha. You say 18 brachos. So how is it abridged? How is it me'ein? Because every single bracha is not said in its entirety. For example, you go, Ata choyne l'adam das, Baruch Hashem choyne nadas. Slach lanu avinu, Baruch Hashem chanan amar b'l'sloya. Me'ein shmona esrei, according to Rav, means you say all 18, but you only open up. We're speaking about the 12 middle. The first 3, the last 3, l'choyde, you say the whole thing. Because you're thinking, you're giving shavach, and you're thinking. But the 12 middle ones, you open up with the first few words and you go to the end. So it's quicker. That's the me'ein. Shmuel says what we said. Means you only end, the middle one has one conclusion. Gemara is going to give you the nusach. The middle one has one Baruch Ato Hashem. You got it? But the beginning of that is a mention of all the 12 middle, as we'll see in a moment. So not only do we have a machlokes, according to Shmuel, it's a total of 7 brachas. That's the bottom line. According to Rav, me'ein yudches is also 18 brachas. 18 barachat Hashems.
So, Rav, Rav says we say whatever. I don't know which 4 or 5 words we say.
I don't know that. Rav doesn't say that. We don't pass him like Rav anyways. Okay. Now the Gemara wants you to know it's not only machlekes hamoyroim, it's really a machlekes tanoim. Is tanoye tana sheva me'ein shmona esrei. Sometimes in Braises you'll find instead of using the words me'ein yudches, you're going to hear the tefillah of Zion, 7 brachas, which will be Keshita Shmuel. The is tanoye tana shmona esrei me'ein shmona esrei. And then the Gemara speaks out. Man do amar sheva me'ein shmona esrei. That will be a Messiah l'Shmuel. Man do amar shmona esrei me'ein shmona esrei Messiah l'Rav. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Se'edo Shalach Rabbi Nachum, who was by Rabbi Yana in the name of Rabbi Yishmael. And Omar Lei, Ezu Me'ein Sheva Me'ein Shmona Esrei the Shmuel. Interestingly, see the Gemara didn't have a shaila on like Vlad had. That was somehow self-understood. Again, I understand even Rav to mean, and I hope if I'm wrong, I hope that God will correct me somewhere, that the first 3, the last 3 were said fully. I think it's easy. Just go with this. What would you say? Atochinu landas, barachat Hashem chayrenados. Hashivenu l'soresecha, barachat Hashem aroitze b'seshuvah. Slach lanu avinu, hamachar ma'ameslech. The eino v'anyenu, barachat Hashem goyel Yisrael. Yeah, the first 2, yeah. Rafeinu Hashem and Rafei, barachat Hashem roifecheli am Yisrael. Barach aleinu Hashem alekeinu, barachat Hashem barach Hashan. Kabashev gadol l'cheirusenu, mekabesem Yisrael. I think if you open up Asida Tilas Hashem, I think, but you go until the first comma. Go until the first comma. But the question is, what will be the nusach of Shmuel? So Amalei, so here's the nusach, and that's why we have, it's called Havinenu. The word Havinenu is from Bina. Grant us understanding. It's interesting. By us, we open up with Das. According to Rav, you emphasize the Das. According to Shmuel, you begin with Bina, Dafka. And that helps us even, okay. Havinenu, grant us understanding. Ritzei teshuva seinu. Slach lonu gayalenu. Refa choloyenu, bareich shenosenu. Now, before we go on, the Gemara pauses. Well, hold on. Bareich shenosenu is not so pashut, as we know that it depends, winter or summer. So in the Havinenu, there's going to be a difference. So this is like an interruption. So Amar Ab Chagai, like this, Kshamim doesn't mean if it's raining. It means if it's during the winter season, which Mechutz La'aretz begins. Right, it's 60 days from the beginning of Tkufa, which is the 4th of December. Oimrim, we say, let's go with the version, we say like this, Baruch shenosenu gishmei bracha. Baruch shenosenu gishmei bracha. If it's during the summer, meaning when we only mention the dew, then Oimrim, mistama Baruch shenosenu betaltelei bracha. The gishmei bracha betaltelei bracha. And then let's go weiter. Now we have to go through the next 6. And Taka only 6. We're learning the Yerushalmi. As Samach was never a bracha for itself. Ki mifuzarim ato mekabetz. That works. That's kabosh evigadu. V'soyim aleinu lishmai. Those who err, right? It is upon you to judge. Hashiva. Ve'al rishoyim toshes yotcha. That's the Balam al-Shinim. Now, what comes afterwards, guys? What do we have afterwards? We have ala tzadikim ala chasidim. You know what you write over here? Not tzaddikim, not chasidim. V'yismuchu kol choyseva. Now, really, how do you connect it? So the words we say the same sachar toiv l'chol habayitchem mishum chabe'emes. But that's in the middle. Why v'yismuchu? Just to know that we have a tradition that when chasidim are called chasidim, why are we called chasidim? And actually, when they interrogated, I think it was the Alter Rebbe, they asked him, "How dare you take upon yourself such an exalted name for your group?" The Alter Rebbe says that we didn't give that name. The Mesnagdim called us Chassid. What would you have called yourself? There's different versions. One version is that we would have chosen a name for ourselves, Freiliche ones, the happy ones. That would be Yismuchu. Instead of the Chassidim, the Yismuchu. It's the same thing. It should be the same thing. And then we go, beautiful, even though that it's not a bracha for itself, you make separate mentions. And now you're up to Shema Leinu, even before we call out your answer. Look at this. Look at this. Baruch Hashem, according to one version. Guys, that's not the ending of the bracha. Baruch Hashem kishama kol tachnunai. You're making a bracha for the past. Blessed is Hashem because he heard He heard in the past, and then you conclude in the present. Baruch atah Hashem shomei tefillah. There's so much to talk about this, but let's go back. No. Now, v'oimer, here we go. That is the middle one, according to Shmuel. But v'oimer shalish brachas nishonos, shalish achronos. Maybe I'm wrong with Rav. The fact that Rav calls it me'ein yud ches, maybe all of them have a me'ein. Okay, the Gemara is not asking Rav. The Gemara is elaborating on Shmuel, and this concludes the me'ein yud ches. Now, I want to say like this: what happens? A little intro to the next Mishnah. If someone davened the me'ein yud ches, they davened the me'ein yud ches for whatever reason, and then the circumstances which justified this abridged version went away. Now they have time to daven proper Shemona Esrei, but they davened already Shachris. Do they have to re-daven it? No. The next Mishnah will mention a few things. We will also now introduce Tefillah Ketzara, and never to confuse the Me'ein Yud Ches versus Tefillah Ketzara. Me'ein Yud Ches, either like Rav or like Shmuel, even though it's not the full, if you said it, you're good. Tefillah Ketzara is one bracha. And there are times that it's not Me'ein Yud Ches, it's one Tefillah Ketzara. That, whenever you can say it, even if you said it, if now those circumstances went away, and there is still this man Tefillah, for that Tefillah, you're chayiv to repeat it. Tefillah, the whole Shemona Esrei. Okay. In other words, we learned in the previous Mishnah, Me'ein Yud Ches. Now we're going to introduce something new. But prior, the Mishnah really gives us two dinner. My intro was for the second. The first din of this Mishnah, which is called their halacha Dalid, is the following. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. We have a similar statement in Pirkei Avos. And he says like this, that Ha'oisa tefillah keva, whoever will make his tefillah a fixed recitation, as the Gemara will clarify options of what this means. But if you do that, which is not good, then you should know, ain't tefillah tachnonim. Your davening won't be a tefillah called tachnonim. We'll see everything. It's enigmatic. The Gemara will explain. You are yoitze, you're yoitze, aber it's nicht. It's not looked upon favorably by God. Next in, says the Mishnah, that Rabbi Yeshua Omer, mind you, Rabbi Yeshua was the one that said in the previous Mishnah that you can always daven me'ein yud ches. Always. But now again, like we said, now we're learning something much less than me'ein yud ches. That if you are going b'makom sakana, and you cannot even daven the me'ein yud ches, epis you can daven. And therefore, epis you're chayiv to daven. So what should you do? Mispalal tefillah ketzara. Don't use the girsa me'ein yud ches. That's wrong. Right? In the tefillah ketzara, a short prayer. What is the short prayer? Hoshia Hashem es amcha es she'edis Yisrael b'chol parashas ho'ibur yiu tzarcheihem lefonecha. At every parashas ho'ibur, may their needs be before you. There is two opinions what the meaning of Parashas Ha'ibur is. Guys, let's learn in Pnei Moshe. We're going to learn one interpretation. You see the Pnei Moshe in the middle of the Mishnah? Afilu b'shah she'ein kodesh la'aveda Parashas Ha'ibur. Ibur comes from the words Evra. They separated. And they bring up a certain amount of anger. It's a beautiful tool, telling God, God, even when you're angry at us, look out for us. Yiu tzarcheihem geluyim lefanecha l'rachem aleim. Okay. Now, you see that? That's the nusach. Says, let's keep on reading the Pnei Moshe. Says the Pnei Moshe that we don't paskin like Rabbi Yeshua, how he had the nusach of tefillah ketzara. Ella hatfila, says the Pnei Moshe, shemispalul mamakim esakana is tzarchiam chamrumim. We say this during the slichas, the datum tzara. We know that tefillah. Kedam b'gemara. Now, it says the Pnei Moshe, we spoke this out by heart. When you daven this, you can daven it when you're walking. You don't even have to stop. You're in a danger. If you stop, you're in bigger danger. When you stop the war, you put everyone and you have to go. The Einai mispalal and tefillah ketzara is you don't daven the three Rishonos. You don't daven the three Achronos. However, says the Pnei Moshe, unlike Havinenu, Whenever you said Havinenu, you already said Havinenu, you were Yoitze the Tefillah, not by Tefillah Kitzada. And let's go back in the Mishnah again, Nusach of Rabbi Yeshua, that we don't pass in like, Baruch Ato Hashem, Shemeya Tefillah v'tachanunim. Beautiful. Zok Gemara. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, saying good. When people, Markham's going to mean the soldiers while they're worrying. They would say a tefillah while they're in the middle of their worry. Says what?
So what do we not pass in like Rabbi Yeshua on?
Meaning the nusach. We have another nusach of the tefillah ketzara.
Okay.
Now, Rabbi Eliezer Oimer. We're just simply quoting the opening of the Mishnah that Hoiset Filosi Kava. If you make it feel to Kava, something fixed, then you should know. Ain't Filosi Tachlo. What does that mean? So like this. Rabba Bohu, in the name of the Amoira Rabbi Lazar, explains the sheet of the Tana Rabbi Eliezer, Ubelvad, Shaloi, Yehei, Koida, Be'igeres, as long as you do not say the words of davening, as you read a letter. When you read a letter, look inside the top. Charedim, Bahachi Pedish Bebavli, Keva, She'enoi Oimra Benachas. There's two problems with Keva. Number one is you're not saying it Benachas. You're saying it too quick. And number two, that you're not saying it with the tone of Tachnunim. No, there's the words and then there's the Negina. There is the speed. When you're going through it quick and you don't have any emotions in it, that's the meaning of Keva. That's one meaning. The only thing is, why is that called keva? And the answer is because when you do something every single day the same way, it becomes routine. However, and therefore, there's a different understanding. Keva means we're actually criticizing people who daven the same words every day. Another interpretation. Don't make it kava means always add something in the Shemona Esrei. Adding doesn't mean, God forbid, to take away the words that were written by the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. But either in every tefillah, you can add a few words connected to that tefillah, which is something that people do. So if a person has someone who's davening for the four, making your tefillah not kava means make it real. If someone needs a refuah shalem while in the refuah before the dot at the end of before you say ki what's the lashon by refuah ki ato not ki ato shmei tefillah skolpeh, but before we say ki keil melech reifenem v'rachmanot, before we say that, when we say the words in our nusach or refuah shalem lechol makoy seinu, there's a dot in the siddur. And you ask God to give it a four to shlema to so and so. That's what you should do. That means it's not keva. That's the other interpretation. Don't leave the nusach the way it is. Oh, Rabbi Acha b'shem Rabbi Yosi tzarech l'chadash b'davar b'chol yoyim. Now I want you to know that there's two ways of understanding l'chadash b'davar. One way will be, I'm getting ahead of myself. One way is to add something in every tefillah of the 12 middle. The other one is add something at least in one. Okay, now let's go weiter. And you should know that this concept of being mechadash b'davar, mechadash doesn't mean to take away. It means in addition to what's written, before that bracha makes a recap, which is done at the end of before the recap, you add something. Achitoifel. Here we're speaking about him, Lamal Yusuf, right? The teacher of David HaMelech. In other words, every time he davened Shemona Esrei, he was mechadash b'davar. Like I just said, Vlad, mechadash means don't just read what it says in the siddur. Make it personal. Amar Rab Ze'eda calls man davenan avat kain. I tried to do that. I said, I'm gonna add something. Whenever I did it, havena ta'eh, I made a mistake. I made a mistake in the words, and therefore I don't. Guys, they didn't have a siddur. If you don't have a siddur, if you're saying it by heart, we all know that. You know when you succeed in saying something, keep on going. Even Ashrei, you know by heart. Like everyone knows Ashrei by heart. Good. Stop in the middle of Ashrei and add your own tefillah. Then go back where you left off. You might get confused. So he rejected. He holds. Rabbi Ze'eda holds it can't be the way Rav Acha is saying that you have to be mechadash b'davar. That cannot be the meaning of Rabbi Eliezer. It doesn't work. I made a mistake. The lace loch ella, so therefore it must be like Rabbi b'shem da amoyre Rabbi Lazar, which means don't read it too quick. Don't read it without emotions. Read it slowly and read it with feeling. Okay, now going back to this concept of L'chadash B'davar. So like we mentioned, there's two ways of learning it. One way is Rabbi Lazar, the Amoira. Amazing. Even though Rabbi Lazar was the one that says, but you should know that when he was Mechadash Davar, he was Mispalal Tfilah Chadasha B'chol Yoim. The Charedim explains Tfilah Chadasha B'chol Yoim means every single bracha of the 12 middle. He added something personal in everyone. However, Rabbi Bo didn't do that in everyone. He made a chiddush in one of the 12. Rabbi Bo, bracha chadasha. That's the way I'm explaining it. The way the Charedim explains it. That tefillah chadasha means b'chol bracha memtzois, and bracha chadasha means in one of them. Every time you pick your own, all of that makes it's not routine. Gavalik. And I want to say something that even though the Gemara is saying that Rabbi Ze'edo says that when I added, I got confused. You know, he's only saying that don't do it because you might get confused, maybe. But if you have now, we have Siddurim. People have printed Siddurim. You won't read from the Siddur. You're not going to get confused. Adarab. Okay. Says the Gemara Vayt.
Rabbi, did we learn something that when you add it in, it has to be the lashon of the bracha? Like
it's something that I say correct, but it's not something that we read inside the Chazal.
Because that would make it challenging for some of us to make additions if we're not so fluent in Lashon HaKodesh.
That's correct. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yoisa Saidonia, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Yosi of Tzidon, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. When we're speaking about adding, let me tell you what you have to add. That prior to beginning your tefillah, even though this does not take away that smichus. You should say, this is a pasuk from Tehillim Kapitel. We have Kapitel Nun Aleph. Adnai Hashem sfasai tiftach ufi yagit tehilosech ula'achar tefilosai hu oimer, like we had yesterday. The end of what used to be Kapitel Yud Ches ends with the words that Yihu l'rotzin emrefi the hegen libe lefanecha Hashem tzure v'gayali. We say it twice. We say it after we finish the brachos. And we also say it after Lakai Netzor. Now, let's look at this. Rabbi Yudan, he agreed that you have to add, but not one prior, one post. Amar Tarvayon, Kumei Tzeloisei. He would begin. Shem Esfasi Ticha Yaget Yilosech. Yehula Ratzanim Refi Vehege Yilonach Hashem Zuru V'Geyali. None of that was considered the hefsed. And then he would begin. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu V'Elokei Avrei Seinu Elokei Avraham. Okay, Chavra, we have another 2 minutes, so let's begin this topic. What's the new topic? The topic is like this: you are in middle of davening, and in the middle of that tefillah, not the next tefillah, like you're middle of shachris, and you realize, oops, I daven shachris. You already daven that tefillah. Now we just mentioned before the concept of l'chadash b'davar. Where else do we find l'chadash b'davar? That's a new topic, but it's connected. It's called tfilas nadavar. Tfilas nadavar means that if I already daven shachris, if I want, I can daven a nushmanes. But I have to add something there. No one is debating that you can do that. But by medvaram amurim, you can do that. That from the outset, you know you're making a tfilas nadavar. If you begin davening and you forgot that you davened already, you didn't begin now. I'm adding my own nachenu, chmachan adavar. You don't know. I'm davening the chiyuv. So you began the kavana to fulfill your obligation. In middle, you realized I already fulfilled my obligation. So Raf says choitech, stop. Shmuel says eino choitech. Look inside the last charein, and we'll stop over here. The loishani. No, it's not like. What just like you can daven any tefillas nadavar, that was the previous. Let's go with the Charedim 6 line before the bottom. Rav agrees with tefillas nadavar. Why? Because you began at l'shem chayva. Shmuel says no, the loishani. Now you realize you said it already. So I remember when I was in 770, I had the merit to learn by the Rebbe. So at that time, Rabbi Avram Ayor, whichever illness it was that his memory was going, he used to daven for many hours. So if it's Parkinson's, if it's another dementia, he forgot. So he would daven for many hours. and then he would forget that he davened. He would daven again. And they would tell him, he had an assistant, that you just daven. Can you imagine a Yid davening for 3-4 hours beautifully? So he used to say in Yiddish, a davening that you don't remember is nishkan daven. He was not yoitzer. And that's the way he spent the end of his life davening. All right, Chevra, to be continued.
Yeah, we daven mincha 1:30 in our office. Sometimes I come to mincha Marav at Sola.
You realize that you
Sometimes
daven.
I partially forgot. I'm standing there like, whoa, wait a minute, I did this already.
According to Shmuel, ain't a chaytach. Even though Hilchas HaKedav v'Yisura, just to know, we're becoming big chachamim. We can follow.
But if I knew it and I remembered it, you're saying the chatchila I could do another mincha.
But then you have to be mechadosh dava. You have to be mechadosh dava. You have to add something new.
Mechadosh dava.
You have to do that. Not mechadosh dava. You can't do it.